Yo YouTube. This is my video for Monday the 25th of March, which was yesterday. On the Friday of last week, even though I wasn't working, I did get a job booked in for the morning, which is going from Peterborough to Bristol. It was a 9 o'clock pickup for a short wheelbase van, and I bid £165 for 168 loaded miles. The mileage for me to get to the pickup was 25 miles, about 40 minutes. So I left at about 8:15 and I arrived at 9 o'clock. When I first arrived at the location, I couldn't quite find the correct unit, but then I asked someone and then I was directed to the right shutter doors and got loaded reasonably quickly. And it was just one small flat item. It was a bit heavy, but it was two people put on the van for me, and it really didn't take much space. So I made my way towards Bristol, feeling quite happy with the starts of my day, and I arrived at around about 12:50 at the place I was dropping off. I helped the guy take it off, put it into their warehouse. I utilised their toilet facilities, and then I made my way off their industrial estate bit onto another bit of the road and parked up looking for another job. By the time I'd finished all that and was ready to look for a job, it was about 1:05. And my plan for the day was to go anywhere. I was happy to tramp out. But when I got to my location in Bristol, when I was looking for jobs, there was very little. It was very quiet. There was a job going from Bristol to Stirling at a backload rate of £100, which I wasn't going to do. There's a job going, I think, from Bristol to somewhere like South Wales, and I just felt that was not going far enough and going the wrong direction. And the third job was going from Bristol to Ringwood, which is one I put a bid on. And I actually, because it was so quiet, I said that I would go a bit cheaper than I would usually do. So I put £60 bid on a small van job going from Bristol to Ringwood, which is sort of near Bournemouth, Southampton way. It was 78 miles loaded, and I was about 26 minutes away. It was the other side of Bristol from where I was. It was about 15 miles to pick it up. And I won that job. And I won that job at 1:20. So I was only bidding for about 15 minutes. But during those 15 minutes I realised it was really quiet. And I could see myself being stuck in Bristol and not being able to get anywhere. I think there might have been a job going to Taunton as well. It was like a short job. So I didn't really want to do that. So in the end I got the first job I bid on, and I was on my way to Ringwood. So I got myself across the other side of Bristol, picked up literally 2 small packages. I would say like a small box package, like a letter and a letter. And then I made my way the 2 hours sort of south towards Bournemouth. And on the way, quite a few jobs came up from my home location. And I was really disappointed that I would be able to bid on them because I was going to be nowhere near home for the following day. I was obviously on my way to near Bournemouth. I was going to get there for around about 4 o'clock if I was lucky. And so I really couldn't be bidding on jobs from my home location. So I made my way to Ringwood, and on the way there were jobs being posted from Wimborne, which is a BH21 postcode. And I worked out that Wimborne was about 20 minutes from my drop-off location, and I had time to get to my drop-off and then across to Wimborne to pick up before 4:30, which is what they wanted the jobs done by. And there was 5 jobs that I remember from Wimborne, all small van jobs, all delivery for the following morning at 9 o'clock. So the first one that came up was going to South Wales, I think it's Port Talbot, which I didn't bid on because I didn't really want to go that far away for the morning. Second job I think was something like Manchester, which I did bid on because that would have been perfect for me, because I need to drop off some stuff to my daughter who's living there at the moment, or living there. So I put a bid on at 75p a mile, and then another one came up to London, which I'd ignored, and another one came up to Bournemouth itself, so about 10-20 miles, and then one came up to Lincoln, and that one really made me salivate. It was picking up at 4:30, delivery at 9 o'clock in the morning at Lincoln, small van job. I was not that far from it. By this point, I'd delivered my item, and about 4 o'clock, and I moved myself to a lay-by off the road between Bournemouth and Southampton at Ringwood. So I was sort of parked up by the road, and it was sort of, I'm going to say about 4:10, maybe close to 4:30, and this job to Lincoln came up, and I put a bid on at 75p a mile, and I didn't get it, and it went really quickly. So somebody picked up that job going to Lincoln, which isn't a busy area, for delivery in the morning from Wimborne, and it just bugged me. What price did that go for? You know, who would do that? Who would get that job? So I plucked up the courage, and I did ring the shipper, and I did say to them words to the effect of, I've just bid on a job to Lincoln and Manchester. I know I haven't got them, but you know, roughly what sort of price did they go for in the end, because I want to know how close I was. And the price that the Lincoln job was sold for was 72p a mile. I worked it out. Basically, I reckon the person charged a fiver less than I did. So I was in the right ballpark in terms of trying to win the job, and so what I took from that experience was, the next time I'm in that area, I'll know that 70-75p a mile is the right sort of price to bidding on work. But what I would do instead is I would ring the shipper. I would make the bid and ring the shipper immediately and say, this is a great job for me, can I do this job for you? Because it might just make a difference between getting a job and not getting a job. Anyway, so I was a bit disappointed because I'd missed out on those jobs from my home location, which I could have done. I could have done so many of those jobs. It's always the way. When you're not at home, nowhere near home, those jobs come up. When you're at home waiting, there's nothing. So what happened next? So it was now, I was 5 o'clock now, and I was sort of still looking for jobs. There wasn't a lot going on. There was a trickle of jobs that came through. So I made my way to a tramping site. There was a Camp for the Night app that I use, and I made my way to a place about 7 minutes away, and it was quite full of lorries, but I found a spot. And so I was still looking for work at this point. I hadn't decided I wasn't going to stop. I wanted to sort of just be sort of in a place that I could sort of I wanted to find a place to stop while I was looking for work. I felt good in terms of my tiredness, and I felt like I could do more work. And then a job did come up that was going from Christchurch, which is 7 miles from where I was, for 15 minutes, going to Feltham, which, if you don't know where it is, it's Heathrow. And I put a bid on it. It was for a small van. It was 93 loaded miles, and I put a bid on £100. And I thought, well, I could get this done and then dead mile at home and be home tonight, and £100 extra in my pocket. That's not a bad decision. So I want to now talk a bit more about this job, and I'm mainly going to talk about it in reference to the shipper. I'm not going to name the shipper because it ended up being a bit of a negative experience for me. The job itself actually was alright. I would do the job itself again, but just dealing with the shipper I found quite irritating. So I want to spend a bit of time just talking through what happened, roughly in the order that happened, from my perspective, and then my sort of conclusion at the end of it. So, I had a phone call from the shipper, and they offered me the job, and the tone of the person on the phone was quite dismissive, and it basically was along the lines of, can you call the person before you arrive? Thank you. Bye. Something like that. Maybe not even a thank you. I'm putting a thank you because that's what I would say. But there wasn't a thank you there. It was just okay, like okay, and then let's hang it up. And so the tone of it was sort of like bored, I would say. Kind of like, oh, I don't want to do this job. And I didn't think it was anything personal with me. I just thought it was them maybe having a bad day. And so I thought, okay, so you want me to call them before I arrive at the drop-off point? That's quite normal. I'm happy with that. That's a really quite a common thing. So I put the phone down. I did say to him, can I have the pickup postcode? And I went way there, and he said, "Oh, I'll give it to you in about 10 seconds." So he didn't want to. I said, I'm going to put it through to you in about 10 seconds, so he didn't want to give me the postcode. He couldn't be bothered to tell me the pickup postcode because he was going to put it through on the CX system. So I asked him that specific question, and he couldn't be bothered to tell me the postcode of the pickup. So I waited for 10 seconds, and there it was. It came through, and I got the notes. And there were a lot of terms and condition notes. So I thought I'll read them at some point. For now, let's just get my way towards the pickup location. And the first note said, call this number half an hour before you arrive at collection. And I thought, wait there, I'm 15 minutes away. Did he mean call the collection point? I thought he meant call the delivery point before I arrive. So, because I was only 15 minutes away and the note said ring half an hour before, I thought, well, there's no point me doing that. I'll get there and find out when I get there. So I made my way towards Christchurch, and it was getting dark now, and I got to this secure industrial estate, and there was a security guard. I asked her about where the place was to pick up, and she gave me the instructions, which was quite handy because it was quite a big security area, and it was something that I would have not found very easy otherwise. But I found my way to the right place. I rang the doorbell, the sort of like a speaker system, and it rang through and no answer. There was a sign saying, go to the goods inn if it's not around. which is where I went to, rang the goods in, and there's a sign there with a phone number on saying if there's no one around, ring this phone number. And that phone number was exactly the same number I had on my notes on CX. So I realised that it definitely was ring before pickup. So at this point I rang that number. There was no answer. I rang the number again. There was no answer. So I then rang the shipper back to let them know that I'd got on site, and there was no answer on the number that I'd got given. Now a different person answered than the first person, but I would say that their attitude was exactly the same. It was dismissive. It was kind of, do I have to deal with this sort of approach? This sounded like he said he'd call the customer. So I said, so I left it with him to call the customer at pickup. About a minute later, I had a phone call from an unknown number, and it actually was the person I'd called originally, not the shipper but the customer, ringing me back from a missed call. And I explained who I was, and he said he would make his way to where I was to give me the item. He was about 20 minutes away. So that's fine. I'll wait, no problem at all. I was a bit disappointed I had to wait, but by this point I knew that I had to wait because there was no one there. And so I had a chance now to read the notes from the shipper about their terms and conditions. And there's two things I would like to point out from them. I haven't got them in front of me, so I can't be specific, but I know specifically one thing. Waiting time, they said, was half an hour free, and then £10 per hour paid pro rata, which to me means if I waited for an hour, they would pay me £5. That's half an hour for free, and then half an hour at £10 per hour pro rata is £5. So, a couple of things. That's really nothing. £10 per hour. I had this not long ago, and I spoke about great waiting time, and I want to really rant about this. £10 an hour for waiting time is offensively poor, and then to pro-rata it, not just to round it up, is even worse. To put it in context, £10 is less than the national living wage for an adult, and we are self-employed drivers, so an hour of our time, you might think, I think these shippers think, you pay the minimum wage because that's what you get paid per hour. But if you PAYE, that might make some sense. If you're an employed driver, then being paid national minimum wage for waiting for an hour, yeah, it makes sense. But we're not. We're self-employed drivers. We have expenses to cover. We need to. Our waiting time is not just our time. It's also the time of the vehicle, the insurances, the memberships, everything else you have to pay for. Being a PAYE driver is a lot cheaper for the driver than being a self-employed driver. But it's exactly the same job. So these waiting times of like £10, £12 an hour are really offensively low, I think, for self-employed drivers. Because the point is, if we wait for an hour, it's not just the hour time that we're wasting, it's the opportunity cost that we're losing out of other jobs we could be doing in that time. So I won't go on about because that's before, but basically that £10 an hour is like that's the lowest I've seen. The lowest I've seen. It's really bad. And the second thing about their notes was it was a convoluted set of instructions about how to invoice a pod. And I can't remember them all because I've kind of gave up the will to live eventually. But basically, the things I remember are that we had to use the CX system for podding and invoicing. But then we had to also email the pod invoice and a monthly account statement, which I just don't understand what that is. If I'm going to do one job for somebody, why do I need a monthly account? And then you had to do, it said, WhatsApp us WhatsApp to this number a photograph of the pod when you finished. And there's other stuff, and I just thought, this is ridiculous. This to me seems like just an excuse to avoid paying drivers. Make it complicated, make it overly complicated, make it overly convoluted, so that there's scope for confusion, and therefore when it comes to paying, you can say, oh, we didn't receive this or that at the right time. So I was not well disposed to this company from the notes and from the two people I've spoken to and their sort of demeanour to me on the phone. Okay, let's move on then. So I did ring the shipper and asked them to. I was going to ring the shipper at half an hour to go. When I was waiting for half an hour to let them know waiting time I started, but luckily I didn't have to do that phone call because the guy arrived, as he said, after about 20 minutes. So by the time I'd got the item, it's one box, and got off site, I'd been on site for half an hour. So that's their free half an hour from me. So I left at 6:55 on my way to Feltham. Now I had to get some fuel, which I got when I got to Basingstoke, I think it was, or Biggleswade. No, neither of those sound right. It wasn't Biggleswade, was it? I got somewhere. There's that sort of size place before Feltham. Got some fuel, so I've got a new average fuel price. And the next thing I want to say is my delivery address was KN door 9. And then a postcode, that's all it was. So I got myself to the right postcode. It was a secured industrial estate. The barrier lifted up, let me through. But by this point it was quite dark. It was about 9ish by the time I arrived. And I was trying to find KN door 9, and those of you who've done this job for a while will know exactly what KN means, whereas I didn't know what KN meant. And I couldn't find door 9 or KN anywhere, and eventually I just had to. It's quite a big industrial estate. I was driving around, and then I stopped at a security cut and just asked the security guard, "Do you know where KN door 9 is?" And he said. And by the time we understood each other, because I was in my van, he was in his box, and he wasn't a fluent English speaker, and I was mumbling. So by the time I made myself understood, he said, "This is KN here." And I looked up and it said Cohen and Nagel, which I have seen before, but if I'd known it was Cohen and Nagel, I would have put that in my sat-nav and found it, whereas KN was nowhere near. I couldn't find it KN. So my quick point is, it was dark. If the shipper had put in the right address, it would have made it easy for me to find the address without that anxiety of trying to find it. In the end, I got in okay. I had to show my driving licence. Got in. The offloading was really easy. It's a bonded warehouse. I had to show, got him to sign my form. Took a photo of the box where I'd left it with the guy, and then I made myself off site. And by the time I'd got all that paperwork done, the photos done, I got out the gates. It was 9:15. So at this point I rang the shipper to say, "I've just delivered your item. I've put a photo of the item and the pod on the CX system. Is that alright for you?" And to be fair, it wasn't a great phone line. He again was quite bored. He sounded quite bored and disinterested. This is the third person I've spoken to from this company. And he kind of said something, and I replied saying I'd done what I'd done. I didn't really hear what he said. I just reiterated what I'd done, and I said, "Is that okay?" And that was it. I finished it off. Now I'd forgotten one thing from this. When I rang the shipper the second time, back at the pickup point, and said I picked up the load, the shipper did say, "Remember to call the guy when you get there." And I was thinking, he thinks I need to call the guy at the delivery point, but I now know the number is for the guy at the pickup point. So even the guy at the shipper's office wasn't clear as to which guy was meant to be called from the number on the system. So it just, anyway, that's just going back 3 hours to that previous conversation. So that company, which I'm not going to name, but if you do work out of, oh yes, sorry, I did forget something else. When I loaded up and the guy said to me about ringing when I got on the pickup point, I did actually say to him, is there anything I need to know about the pickup point and how to find it? Because I was concerned that I was going to go to a place called the Horseshoe. I've been there once before and it was an absolute nightmare trying to offload there, and I don't ever want to do that again. But the postcode wasn't clear as to where I was going. It was a TW14 postcode, so it could have been the same place. But the guy on the phone just said, "I'll just find door 9." He said, "It's really easy." Well, he didn't even say it was really easy, so he wasn't very helpful. But obviously, in the end, it wasn't the Horseshoe, so that's why the offloading was a lot easier than I was expecting to be. Right. Anyway, to bring this bit to a close, that shipper I just found, I'm going to summarise it and say they were quite unprofessional in the way that they were communicating verbally and written what they wanted me to do. I almost want to do negative feedback, but I won't, because in the end I've got it dealt with. But I also want to block them. I don't really want to work for them again. It's just that I don't really have capacity to just start not working for people now. I don't have that much work that I could do that. But I'm going to remember the shipper's name. I'm going to be really careful taking a job for them in the future. And in the end, it was really more bad vibes than anything bad about the job. As I said at the start, the job was kind of okay in the end, but just the shipper's vibes, I just don't find them polite, professional, they're not interested. And I leave that experience feeling that they're a shipper that just wants to deal with quantity. They just don't care about dealing with people. It's about getting as much work through the doors as possible, as quickly as possible. They are a London-based shipper. They are dealing out of, I'm assuming they do a lot of work out of Heathrow. So I'm assuming they deal with lots of different drivers who are very poor and very good. But I've left that interaction last night with them just having a really bad taste in my mouth about the whole experience. More about, as I said, the vibe of it than anything else. And I want to avoid them. They're not the sort of people I want to work for. They're kind of the people that, when things go wrong, they wouldn't be on your side. I feel that I feel I was lucky that the job in the end was quite simple, rather than it was helped by the shipper. The shipper was more of an inconvenience than a support in this case. So yeah, it's. I feel this morning more annoyed about it than I did last night when I was dealing with it. I suppose I was grateful for the work, and to be fair, £100 was all right in the end. It made my stats all right, but just in hindsight, if I get to choose a shipper to work for or not work for, it won't be them. Right, here are my stats for Monday, and in the end, it was all right. After I got filled up with fuel, I've got a new average fuel price. It was 14.86 pence per mile this week. I drove 514 miles, 514 in total. I worked for 15 hours and 40 minutes, and the last hour or so was pushing it. I was quite tired. I got home in the end about 11:30, 11:45, and just went straight to bed. I was really tired, so it wasn't comfortable at the end there. It was a bit too much time on the road. In the end, for the day, I made £325, 325. So it's made up of the 165 going from Peterborough to Bristol, the 60 from Bristol to Ringwood, then the £100 going from Christchurch to Feltham. So in the end, my dead miles during the day were really low. I did a total of 47 dead miles for the 3 jobs. It was just that right at the end there, when I dead miled at home, where I did an extra 120 odd miles. So the actual day was reasonably successful. I earned after fuel £249, 249, because my fuel cost was £76.38. So that was pretty much my target, and my target after fuel is £250 per day on average. So pretty much I did that on Monday, and I decided that it's probably now a good time to start really pushing to achieve that target now more regularly. It's work. The last few weeks, work has got steadily, slowly, should I say, slightly easier on CX, slightly better. It's still difficult at the moment, but I'm managing by putting the hours in to get reasonable income at the moment. I've only been working 4 days this week because it's Good Friday, and I'm guessing there's no work available on Friday. So I want to try and achieve my target this week, each day on average. I might not do it, but I think because of January and February being really, really difficult, I chose in that period to not even bother trying to get my target, just to get as much as I could. But now I'm going to go back to trying to get the amount of work, amount of money I need on average per day. Okay. So that's everything I want to talk about Monday. If you are not like that ship I dealt with yesterday, or a driver who works professionally and fairly, then I hope you do really well. Thank you very much for listening to this video, and I shall see you later on today or tomorrow morning. Farewell, friends.